So I'm joined today by Matt Woodard. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
I feel like we've been talking about this for a long time, so I'm pleased that we're finally sitting down to have this conversation. Thanks for making the time.
Absolute pleasure.
So the purpose of today's episode is to kind of give job seekers an idea of what's going on the other side of the fence from the internal kind of talent acquisition side of things. And I feel like you're the perfect person to help with that and answer those questions. Do you want to start, Matt, by giving us a bit of an overview of your career and tell us a bit about you?
Sure. Great. Well, look, I guess from a professional perspective, I've been in recruitment now for pushing 20 years. It was only ever a stopgap, but it's one of those things that you kind of fall into.
It's always the way, isn't it?
As I'm sure you can relate. But the last 10 or so have been working for fast-paced sort of scaling companies, the likes of Zendesk and Zero back in New Zealand, and more recently with a company, Scalr Build, big US based tech consultancy. So I've been working and running building teams, building functions over the last decade or so. And that's kind of that feels like that's my niche now. That's what I really enjoy doing. That's what I can sort of get out of bed in the morning for. That sort of that ability to build a function, but then I guess in doing so really add value to organisations and sort of see them grow as a result. I guess more recently, I was one of the unfortunate victims of redundancy when there was a lot of that happening 12 months ago. So I was made redundant from my role. So I started my own thing, Scalr. Thank you. In June last year. So yeah, really working in a similar vein, working with startups and scale-ups to help them establish robust TA functions, strategies, systems, processes, people, that sort of thing. And yeah, it's been going really well. It's interesting to see how many organizations have started their function, but just as their business evolves, they haven't had the ability or capability to grow with it. So working with people like myself has been really valuable for them to actually create a function that they can grow with in future as well.
Yeah, and I guess kind of fine tune process, and because the process that you would need when you're maybe 50 people is going to be totally different to the process when you're 200 or 300, etc.
Exactly. Yeah, you're going from startup where it's very scrappy and you just want to just get some good people into the business to something a bit more mature. And what does that look like? How do you get to the point where you are 300 people and you're much more of an enterprise business in a very short space of time?
Nice. From your perspective, do you have, I guess, sort of an overall ethos, if that's the right word to use, or approach when it comes to talent acquisition? What are the types of things that are important to you when you're looking at building a function, process, and I guess also culture within talent acquisition?
Yeah, I think the word that immediately sprang to mind when you asked that was consistency. I think that's one of the things that lets scaling organizations down, is that lack of consistency in the way they go to market, the way they're viewed in market, the way that for example, their jobs are advertised, the way that the hiring managers conduct the interview processes, the onboarding processes. One of the things that I've always sought to do and to bring into the teams that I've built is that consistency of process, because I think that's so important from an external candidate experience perspective to actually have that consistency across the board. And I think that reflects well on the organization as a whole. It reflects well. It means the companies generally are more well regarded because the experience has been as good as it can be, whether the person gets the job or not. But also means internally that you understand your role and the processes you need to follow within the business to help help bring the right people on. So it's that consistency. So that you're generally going to get a consistent level of quality within your new hires as well.
And I think, you don't have to spend that much time on LinkedIn, even though we both probably spend far too much time on
Far
there.
too much.
You don't have to spend a lot of time on there to get a sense that there's perhaps a bit of is disconnect maybe the right word in terms of I think the experience that some job seekers are having with some organisations, there's a level of kind of dissatisfaction there, probably from both sides, I think. But where do you think a lot of that is coming from? Is it back to your point of consistency that people, maybe it's even expectations? Do you think people's expectations are realistic in terms of what they expect from a company?
I guess it depends what you mean by expectations. I think if you expect your application to be acknowledged, and if you're unsuccessful to be notified of that, I don't think the expectations are particularly high. I think that's the bare minimum that an organization should and could do. If someone's taken the time and effort to apply to your company, irrespective of whether they're a right fit for your organization or not, that person has taken time and effort to do that. And to not even get any kind of acknowledgement, whether good or bad, it's pretty poor. Interestingly, from a personal perspective, when I was looking for roles before I decided to start Scalr last year, that I think it must have maybe applied for 8 to 10 roles, and I think I heard back from maybe 2. And the organisations I work for, and your experience in the past as well, Emma, we would have had a candidate experience, candidate care front of mind. That would have been the most important thing for us, to make sure that irrespective of the outcome, the candidate felt they had a good experience. Because when you've had it's that old thing about when you've had a bad experience, you tell 10 people. If you have a good experience, you tell 5. So it's vital from an organisation's reputational perspective that they're doing the basics to make sure a candidate, irrespective of outcome, has had a good experience. And I was shocked, because I just assumed that most organizations using new technologies and the increased number of internal functions in an organization would have got their house in order, basically, to make sure that it wasn't happening. And the amount of times that I fell through the cracks for even just these processes is incredible. So no, I don't think candidates have unrealistic expectations. I would think, as I said, just the basics is kind of what continues to lack in certain areas. And this is why people like, and a shout out to Steve Gard, who set up Circle Back Initiative as a way of holding organizations accountable for doing the basics with their process, getting back to candidates. I think if you sign up to CBI, then you've made a commitment and a pledge to responding to everyone who comes through your process.
There's kind of almost, I was thinking as you were saying that, there's almost a kind of an inbuilt irony of someone applying for internal talent acquisition positions and not having a positive experience. There's something doesn't seem quite right there. But I guess it's interesting to have the experience on the other side and actually experiences as a job seeker and understand and know how that feels when you're essentially ignored. And
this is why recruiters continue to get a bad rap. And I'm sometimes scratching my head thinking, I don't know where this is coming from. We run the recruitment meetup, and there's a lot of people who seem to be doing the right things by candidates, and the conversations we have and the sessions we put on suggest that people are adopting modern approaches, technologies, to make sure that the candidates aren't falling through the cracks and aren't being ignored. But there still seems to be a great swathe of companies who could do better.
I think, and maybe this is just, maybe I'm being a bit naive, but I just think in its simplest form, it's just manners. Like you don't even have to make it more complicated than that. Just reply to someone. It's just good manners to respond and to say, thank you for applying, whatever is the appropriate response. But it's just kind of basic manners, isn't it?
I think if you're in the situation where you're looking for a job, obviously there's something's gone on in the background, right? You've been made redundant, or you've had to quit a toxic work environment, or whatever. You come back from leave. There's obviously some sort of motivating factor, and it's often the hope that kills you, right? In these situations, you think, I'm really excited about this job. I put all my effort into applying, and then you just you never hear back. Like it's just human decency that's lacking
so.
in certain parts. But hopefully organizations are, the companies that signed up to CBI will continue, and we'll hold ourselves as an industry to better account.
Yeah, you mentioned technology a couple of times there, and that was something else I wanted to talk about in terms of how much technology kind of plays a part in the overall process, like which parts of the process are technology and which parts are human,
Yeah.
I guess. And I appreciate it's going to vary from organisation to organisation, but can you just talk sort of broadly about technology and how it's used from a TA perspective?
So we were talking before this about bots filtering CVs, and I don't know whether I've just missed it, but I've never seen that. Maybe that's something that's happening overseas or something. But I've never encountered it. Every applicant tracking system ATS that I've worked with has elements of automation that you can implant into that. But generally, every single candidate will be reviewed by human eyes. There may be depending on volumes, there may be sort of tools to help filter that to a degree, but I've never come across people needing to like keyword optimization and all that sort of thing. I think I've seen that when applying for roles, or an organization is looking for certain skills or experiences or technologies that that people may have used, and then you sort of use that to help inform to the cover letter or your CV. You make sure that information's in there, just so that you're flagging to the person reading your CV that you have that experience and that they're seeking. But I've never really seen that sort of bots or anything. And I think there's there seems to be a lot of fear mongering going around LinkedIn that you need to pay this amount of money for someone to optimize your CV for keyword searches and that sort of thing. I don't know.
I think that's exactly what it is, actually. I think it is a bit of kind of fear mongering. And I think maybe because it's part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation. I think because job seekers don't know what's happening, or they don't understand what that process looks like, or kind of how that application is being filtered, that they might start to kind of get nervous. And then, they read something on LinkedIn and like, oh God, I haven't done that. Maybe that's why I'm not being successful. But again, I think it's probably as simple as, if you have the type of experience that role is looking for, then those keywords, they're going to be in there because it's the work that you've been doing. It's not more complicated than that. But I think maybe people make it to be something bigger in their minds because they're not seeing success, or as we said before, not getting a response.
I think there's a tendency. There can be a tendency sometimes when people are desperate, really eager to get a role, they can just apply for everything. And then when they're applying for roles they don't have the skills or experience for, and therefore that sort of informs their view that they don't have the right CV or the right background to do these roles, where in actual fact it's probably being a little bit more deliberate about the kind of roles you are applying for, rather than just scattergun approach, actually taking time to investigate the individual organizations, the industry, the type of organizations who might want or who might use the skills. I'm thinking about at the moment. I'm thinking about developers, right? If you need someone with, if you have a strong Ruby background, a strong .NET background, then you are maybe, if you're not getting traction, and you identify organizations who use .NET, who use Python, and reach out to them first, or if you know that's what that organization's going to be doing, then you apply for the roles in that organization, so that you're in the right sphere, you're in the right kind of environment that your skills would be seen as valuable and would be beneficial, as opposed to, oh well, I've done .NET my whole life and now I'm going to go and I want to go be a Ruby dev, but I don't have any experience, so why am I not getting any traction? I think there needs to be a little bit of like realism and to these applications as well.
You mentioned there ATS, the applicant tracking system, and I've never worked internally, hence this conversation. Obviously, you know a hell of a lot more about it than I do, but my sense is there that in that sense, technology should be making the process better, in that people shouldn't be falling through the cracks because the technology has captured that application, and through the process of technology there should be some sort of automatic response. Even if we've got your application, thank you, we'll come back to you within set time frame. So how, given that I think fairly prolific use of that type of technology, how are people still falling through the cracks?
It's a good question. It's either that the ATS hasn't been set up to be fully optimized so that everybody is getting responded, or it's unfortunately it's maybe human error. I've taken roles and joined teams in the past where there just hasn't been that consistency of process within the recruitment function. Some one recruiter is responding to every candidate at the end of a process or during the process, and someone will just go, okay, well, let's move on and hire something else, and then you end up having 200 or 300 people who haven't been responded to. So I think oftentimes it is kind of individual, down to the individuals to make sure that they are disciplined enough to make sure that they're following through and letting every candidate know the outcome, irrespective of what that outcome is.
Do you think also it can be a resource problem, that the function is too lean, that there's not enough people actually in the function to try and deal with the volume of recruitment, volume of applicants, volume of jobs? Is that sometimes how it happens?
I mean, it's possible, and I think it's an interesting point you make, because obviously with the raft of redundancies and things coming through from recruitment, just companies not hiring much last year and that much this year, it's TA is always unfortunately the first cost cutting to be made. So now a lot of organisations are expecting more from their remaining functions with less people. So there is that strong potential for sure.
And I think the point that sometimes gets missed, and it happens to recruiters as well. I totally understand the frustration from job seekers when they're not getting a response, and it sucks, it's not right, and it shouldn't happen. But there's also a lot of competing priorities for the recruiter, and whether they're external or internal as well, and they're trying to kind of balance workload, balance the type of customer service that they want to deliver. Like they're under pressure too. So I think it's easy sometimes for one side to look at the other side and be unhappy, but there's competing priorities and different things going on both sides of it.
Yeah, you're right. But as I said, I think an internal recruiter has a responsibility to every single candidate that comes through the organisation, irrespective of whether they're the one that are going to be hired or they're totally unsuitable. I think it's a poor excuse to say I didn't have the time to get back to everybody, because the applicant tracking systems make it easy for you to do that. Preloaded templates that you can send out to candidates. So it's a pretty bad look. And a lot of organizations I see, some larger organizations as well, say, well, we'll only get back to you if you're successful. And I just think that's just really, really poor. So, as an industry, we just need to continue doing better, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because if I was going to apply for a role and I read that, I would probably not want to work at that organization for that reason. It would put me off. It would speak to culture. It would speak to so many things, and I would just think, actually, no, I don't think that organisation is for me, and I wouldn't even proceed with the application.
You're probably right. Yeah.
Maybe that says a lot about me. I don't know, but I wonder what percentage of people read that and feel similarly. It's something that I've said often. When I was recruiting, I used to recruit marketers, so I would often kind of have this conversation with marketers in terms of, if organisations viewed candidates, job seekers, as customers instead of candidates, then I think the process would look a bit different. Because on the one hand, you might have a large corporate spending millions of dollars on marketing and advertising to get new customers in one part of their business, but then in another part of their business, they're basically ignoring them. They're ignoring potential customers. They're ignoring existing customers. or just telling them to go away or telling them that they're not going to bother talking to them. It seems a bit of a disconnect to me in terms of how you actually treat people.
Well, I think I kind of think about it like, well, if you've applied to Nike and Adidas and you have a really really terrible experience with Nike, in the outside world, you're more likely to go, okay, I'll buy some new Adidas sneakers than Nike now, right? Just because of that associated experience that you had, right?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, it would colour my judgment.
As I said, so it's almost more important to get back to the unsuccessful people. Effective definitely is to get back to the unsuccessful people than it is to the obviously to the ones that have been successful in the process. Because as I said, they are your customers. They are the ones that will be writing reviews about your company on Glassdoor and the experience they had there. And that stuff is pretty hard to get away from, right?
Yeah. I think it's the old adage, I can't say it properly, that someone might not remember exactly what you said to them, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And I just think it is so true in this instance, because even if they weren't successful, obviously that's not great news. They're going to be disappointed. But if that's delivered in the right way, it can still be a relatively positive experience for the person.
Yeah, absolutely.
What in your opinion, experience, what can someone do to make themselves stand out? If 100 people are applying for a particular role, what can someone do, either in terms of how they present their CV, other things that they can do? What's a kind of a standout application look like to you?
There's no sort of one answer to this. I always think that authenticity is the key. For example, I'll come back to sort of more senior people, but when I used to hire interns and graduates, the applications that stood out for me were the ones that attached letters which talked a little bit about who they were and their experience and let their personality come out. And I think that's often something that gets missed with CVs. I think it's drilled into them that it's professional. But what you lose with that is a sense of personality and sense of how this person may end up fitting culture as a result of their individual personality. And that's what makes people different. When I've written my CV, I tried to write it in a kind of quite conversational and hopefully engaging way that the people sort of see a little bit of me coming through. I think that is the thing that often gets missed with CVs. You're told to keep it professional. Told to keep it. These are the things I've done, and then hope for the best. But then you realise very quickly that 8% of people just do exactly the same thing. They basically write their job description into their CV and assume that is sufficient to get them to sort of make the difference with an employer, whereas actually somebody who's taken the time to think, actually, no, what are the things that I've done within the role that make me stand out? So I never want to read a CV and say, okay, well, I've you're a developer, I've done this and this. They're the standard things that you would expect a developer to do for this role, right? If you're applying for a senior software engineer, then the hiring manager reading that is going to be more senior to you. So they know what a senior software engineer does and the expectations for them for this role. Cool. You have to demonstrate that you can do the job. But then also, what were the other things that you did outside of your role which made you stand out from everybody else in the team? What projects did you initiate? What processes did you streamline? What opportunities did you get for saving money for the organization? Were you able to identify any new initiatives or products or approaches that the organization could take? It's those kind of things which I think will make you stand out. It isn't just the fact that you've done 5 years of Ruby dev. That's great and that adds value, but it doesn't. The stuff that will make you stand out head and shoulders above everybody else is the fact that you've thought about, okay, well, what else have I done?
It's so interesting. I totally agree with you, and I think this don't know where it came from. Maybe it's a slightly old-fashioned idea that your CV has to be this very dry, purely, professional history with no sense of
Yeah.
personality, with no sense of who you are. And it's just not helpful. In fact, I actually had this conversation with someone yesterday and used the phrase that if someone's hiring you, they're hiring you, the person, not just your experience. It's everything. It's the behaviors, it's everything, the soft skills, everything that comes along with that. And yet when most people approach your CV, they purely just look at the experience and kind of the dryness that can ensue when they just talk about that.
A lot of
It's
organizations aren't just hiring for skills, they're hiring for attitude. And I think if you can demonstrate that you've got, an attitude that lends itself well to what the organization is seeking, that innovation, or that kind of, that approach which is going to help take that business forward, or that team forward, or that, then those are the things that really will make you stand out. And you're really good at this, so I'll not tell you how to suck eggs. But when I talk to people about their CVs, I always say, look, make sure your most recent experience, you focused on the last 7 years or 3 jobs, right? That's the most relevant and valid, probably, experience that you've got. And then the most recent role, 6 to 8 detailed bullet points about your recent experience, and go into a bit of detail. I think people fear a lengthy CV, that they're told by so-called professionals that it has to be 1 page, 2 pages. But I don't think I've never
no value in it.
never
You
really
can't.
subscribed to that kind of view, and that 6 to 8 bullets, talk about the things you've done, talk about the value you've added, talk about the initiatives you create. That sort of stuff will set you apart, and I think it's worth investing time and effort into that. And the sort of subsequent roles, 4 to 6 points, but just talk about all the value you've added. Remember that a CV is a sales document, right? And the only person that's going to really put you in the best possible light is you. So you really need to overcome any fears you might have about, like, feeling like you're overselling or boasting about your experience. This is the one time to do that. Be humble the rest of your time, but not in a CV.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because I think that is the thing that makes the majority of people feel uncomfortable, is being seen as boastful or being overly salesy. But as you say, that's what a CV is. It is a sales document. You are selling yourself. And I think it's often helpful to try and remove yourself from it, in a sense. Like, if this person was your friend and not you, how would you talk about them? How would you talk about their experience? You'd be far more ebullient than you would probably be about yourself. So if you're able to, I guess, weirdly detach yourself from it, it probably helps to be much more, to kind of sing your own praises a bit more in that sense. And also I think people can perhaps overcomplicate what a CV is. As you said, it's a sales document, and the purpose of that CV is to get you an interview, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all it's there for.
It's to generate enough interest that they want to learn, that an organization wants to learn more. You don't want to put so much information that a decision can be made on your application either way, but you want to make enough that you've teased out, and enough interest that the organization wants to have a further conversation. That's really the aim of it. That's what it's there for.
Yeah. That leads very nicely into my next question, because I was going to ask about interviewing. How can someone be a great interviewee? Because I think the interview is a two-way street. It's got to be, maybe not fully 50-50, but definitely a two-way conversation between both sides, and that requires a good interviewer, but it also requires a good interviewee. So, what advice would you give to job seekers kind of before, during, and after an interview?
It's amazing from very recent experience. It's amazing how many people there are in the market, how many really good people there are in the market, but how many people who still just don't take the opportunities that when they're presented with them. So an example is that I've recently been interviewing some people, and you say, okay, so what do you know about our company? And you've provided them with links, information about the company prior to them joining your call, a few days, a week before, even a couple of days before. And the amount of people that say, I don't know, I haven't looked at the website, I haven't looked at this. It blows my mind, Emma, frankly. You're a job seeker. You have taken the time and effort to apply to an organization. That organization is interested in talking to you, but you haven't gone the extra step. It's not really that much effort to go and
It's kind of 101,
click on a
isn't it?
link that you've been provided with to say, this is who the organization is. Even if the website is basic, you get a basic understanding of who that organization is. And then hopefully you get a sense of why you want to work for that organization, that industry, with the challenges they have. I think it's to be a good interviewee, it takes a little bit of effort to actually just to do a little bit of research and actually find out why you want to work for that organization, rather than just the fact that they have a role that you want. Actually, why do you want to work in a specific industry? What do you see as being the challenges? What do you see as being the opportunities for you? What would you like to dig into and learn more about? Actually like really putting yourself in the role, in that organization, and making sure that it's going to be a good fit for you in the first place, rather than just the fact that they have a role that has the same title as the one you want, right? That is the thing. Take a little bit of time and effort to do some research up front. When you're in the interview, the best approach is to, when you are asked questions, which you will be, and try to answer in a way that you're answering, regardless of how the question's asked. Try to provide an answer in a structure that like you're answering a competency-based question. Give an example of a time when you've done this. So the reason that those questions are asked is that their interviewers are looking for the candidate to create a picture in their mind of when they have addressed a certain thing, a heavy workload, or different priorities, discrete thing, whatever it is. They're creating a picture in their mind that they can then transpose into the work, into the role that they have, to then go, okay, that is a good fit, or that brings something a little bit different to actually what we have existing in the team, therefore they're a good fit, or actually that's going to be really conflicting, or that's completely against the way that we operate in the business, therefore there's probably not going to be a fit. But that is the best way for an interviewer to sort of demonstrate experience, but also demonstrate that they have really invested time and effort into thinking about their work as well.
Do you have any, I guess, kind of favourite questions that you like to ask, and also that you've heard interviewees ask at the, there's always that kind of dreaded bit at the end where the interviewer says, have you got any questions for us? And a lot of people don't know what to say at that point. Have you heard any kind of great examples of questions that people have asked?
You tend to get it quite a lot with sales candidates, but which is a good thing. Have I done it? The question's more or less along the lines of, have I done everything in this interview to demonstrate that I'm capable of, that you come to a decision around the role. And I like that, because you're asking, do you have any reservations?
Yeah.
What are your concerns that I might be able to address now? And oftentimes and I've used that in interviews myself in the past, and they say, okay, well, we're just not sure about this. Let me have the opportunity to address that for you, which then hopefully overcomes any doubts or any concerns one way or the other in their mind. So that is a good question. I always like to be asked about what are the opportunities for longer term growth. What's the career path that I can see myself? What is the career path that I will have within the business? How can I continue to my learning and development? Because you're thinking about the future. And you're positioning yourself that you want to be at the organization long term, which is obviously an exciting thing for an employee to hear, that somebody, who will want to be there for long term, they can grow and they can develop and work with the business for a long time. I think those kind of questions that are sort of forward thinking are always well received.
How would you advise someone? I've been asked this question quite a lot in the past, and I'm interested in your take on it. How would you advise someone to assess culture during an interview? Are there particular questions that they can ask that give them a good sense of what the culture is actually like, not what the kind of glossy veneer of culture might be?
It's a good one. I guess culture, it can be a tricky one, because if you're in a sort of growing business, then the culture is something that evolves. But I think it probably means different things to different people, and certain cultures and environments will be better for certain people. So I think it's maybe just understanding what they want to see in an organization. Are they someone who's passionate about DE&I, or sort of helping to work with First Nations, or that sort of stuff? Like, what are maybe is there like a focus on sustainability or charity work? What is it that's important to you, and then trying to dig into that probably informs quite well around the sort of fit from an candidate's perspective.
I also think it's quite interesting to get a sense of what the interviewer likes about working in that organisation. It's quite a simple question, but I think the answers can be quite insightful and not always what you expect.
Yeah.
The other version I've heard of that, which I also thought was quite a good question, was, again, maybe asking the interviewer about what they like about the organisation, and then kind of the follow-up to that is, when you started working here, were there any differences that you found from what you were expecting when you accepted the role? Was it kind of as it was presented, or were there kind of differences or challenges that you found? And I think that's quite an interesting question as well, and probably one that someone isn't necessarily expecting or hasn't been asked before. So you're not going to get a kind of not a pre-rehearsed, but you're not going to get just a generic answer. They're actually going to have to think about it. So it's more likely that you're going to get some off the cuff that's honest. Kind of
more authentic.
How they actually feel about it. One thing I did want to ask you, how do you feel when people reach out to you directly? If I've applied for a role through the formal channel, and then I look you up on LinkedIn and I send you a message saying, hey Matt, I've just applied for this role, interested in it for X, Y, and Z reason. Do you like that? What's your kind of take on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think that shows willing, and it shows enthusiasm in your role. Yeah, I guess I've done it in the past for roles that I've been really excited about. Just that I've applied for this role. Please let me know if there's anything that I can anything further you need from me. Otherwise, I'll sort of wait to hear from you in due course. Yeah, I get that, and as I said, I think it's a positive from my mind.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's a differentiator. If 100 people have applied for a role and only, in my experience, 1 or 2 probably out of 100 have done that, because I would typically receive that, and then if I haven't already, I will immediately would go and look at the application and go, oh, that's great, really proactive. Let me see what their experience looks like.
It's definitely now you raise it, it's definitely it probably makes me think more closely about that individual, or look more favorably upon them, and when you do come to do your shortlisting.
Final question, Matt. We have reached that time.
Wow.
And it's always the final question. Thinking back over your career, and I guess kind of everything you've learnt to date, is there something that you know now that you wish you knew then?
I was asked this a little while ago, and my answer
stole my question.
Yeah, my answer remains the same. I think it's if you're not from a young age like set on becoming whatever profession you end up doing, and you're just not clear about exactly what it is where you want to be. My advice to my younger self would just be to try as many different things as you can, and I think you use the learnings from them to learn more about yourself, learn more about the things you like to do, things you don't like to do, more importantly, and then use that information, knowledge, to then put it towards a career the way you are going to be fulfilled, and you are actually going to use your strengths. You're actually going to be able to be yourself, and I think this is probably why, certainly for me in recruitment. My first job out of school was working for an insurance company in the UK, and and working the customer service desk, and I love that because I get to talk to people all the time, and you're part of a team, and I love that as well. You're able to, and you actually felt like you were able to help people, and that's always been my kind of big driver for me, is actually providing value and helping people. And you get to do that in recruitment. You get to you get to do that on a pretty much daily basis, and the feedback you get from people who said, you've made such a difference to my life, or this, that, and the other. It's just great. It's just really great, and it really helps validate the work that we do. So yeah, and it kind of led me to all the experiences I had previously led me to do what I do now, a job that I really enjoy. So I think it is just going and having different experiences, and then using that knowledge to force that career path for you. Someone I was speaking to recently also said comparison is the thief of joy. Someone very wise, dear to me, Emma.
I'm laughing because that was me before we started recording.
Yeah, I can't lie, it was. But it's such an apt quote, because I think there's the issue, you can run the risk of comparing and contrasting yourself to others, people at the same age or same stage of life who are doing better than you or doing worse than you, and comparing yourself to others. And I think it's a really dangerous thing to do, because you run the risk of not enjoying the experience and the achievements you've made, because you haven't got an extra 100k in the bank, or this, that, and the other. But everybody's journey is different and individual and unique, and I think take your time and find your own path. I think that would be the lesson that I would give to my younger self, for sure.
Great advice. Awesome advice. Thank you very much, Matt. Really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Emma.